Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Be Well, Be Keto. And a couple weeks ago, I was super excited because I was actually on somebody else's podcast. And today she is on mine. Her name is Jessica Tai, and she is a certified nutritional therapy practitioner, host of the wellness podcast Keto Lifestyle, and a true farm girl. She's passionate about helping people achieve positive results through nutrition and creating wellness habits. She's from Cincinnati, Ohio, and has been happily married to her husband Derek since 1996. They have 5 children and a barn full of farm animals ranging from chickens to alpacas. Hey, so let's just go and say hi to Jessica. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Be Well, Be Keto, the show that highlights ordinary people achieving extraordinary results and changing their lives for the better with a ketogenic diet. You too can be healthier and live better by adopting this amazing lifestyle. If you are new to the show, new episodes go live every Wednesday for your encouragement and support. And all show notes can be found at bewellbeketo.com. Listen each week and add the show to your favorites on your best podcast app. And if you know any cool people that would like to share their story, please contact us at support@highenergygirl.com. And if you want to follow us on social media, which I highly recommend, you can either join our Facebook group called High Energy Girls, if you're a girl, or follow us on Instagram and YouTube at The High Energy Girl. Now let's get to this week's episode with your host, Tracy Gluhite. Yep, that's me. Guess what, everyone? My book is out. It is a revised and updated edition of a book I wrote 5 years ago called No Frickin' Way, 21 Days to Ditch the Diet and Lose Weight the Keto Way by Loving Yourself to Health. When I first wrote the original book, I was not a believer in the low-carb movement, but after all the years of research I've done, I am sold out for life. In this book, you will learn about all the lies you have been fed, how to engage in loving self-care, how to eat nourishing foods that provide massive energy, why the ketogenic diet is not a fad, how to heal your body through fasting, why you should move your body to get stronger, and how to create an empowering mindset. Start reading now and finally achieve the high energy and positive body image you deserve. Check it out on Kindle, on Amazon. And if you like it, please leave us a review because this will help more people find it. I really want to inspire people to not deprive themselves, but to nourish themselves with loving self-care and amazingly healthy food so that they can age stronger. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing it. Hey, Jessica, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
I had so much fun with you on your show, and you're just such a high energy girl. So
yeah, right? Remember Sister from Another Mister?
Yeah, I remember that. I felt the same way. That was really cool. So if there's a listener that doesn't know you, why don't you let them know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I am, well, first and foremost, I guess I'm a mom and a wife, and I am a nutritional therapist, so certified nutritional therapy practitioner. And I have a brick and mortar office practice here where I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. My office is actually located in the little town of Loveland, Ohio. Really cute little town here, historic town. And so that's kind of what I do day to day. We have a farm that we raise. We have about 55 or 60 animals at any given time on our farm. So we're very, very busy with that. That's my kind of my deal. I daily am taking care of all those guys in addition to the other stuff that I do. So I'm just very, I'm also a podcast host like yourself. And I just love getting the message out to people of just wellness and health and nutrition and just kind of demystifying a little bit of all of the stuff that, I feel like people kind of get the white coat syndrome where they think that if the doctor isn't telling them something that it's, that they shouldn't listen to it, or it's woo-woo, or you know what I mean? Or if the opposite end of that is if the doctor in the white coat tells them something, then it must be the gospel. Like that's it. There's no other way. And so I like just getting kind of getting more information out there so people can understand that maybe their doctor doesn't know everything. And while doctors are great, and I have many doctor friends, so I'm definitely not hating on doctors, but just that, in our allopathic medical system that, maybe they aren't looking to necessarily get you off of the medications, and maybe they don't really know how to help you live your day-to-day life in a preventative way and a healthful way versus, they're there to help you in an acute situation and when you need relief or symptom relief immediately, but just kind of understanding that there's other ways to go about living out there, and it doesn't have to be just a pill for everything. So that's kind of my passion, is just doing that. I do some educational talks and seminars and things, and I love those. And that is where I get my energy from. I mean, if you think I'm high energy, normally, if you saw me in one of those, you'd probably be like, girl, slow down. Because I just start talking like crazy. And I love that. I love that environment. I love educating. I love it when people are asking questions and they want to know more. Like, that's my jam.
Yeah, I hear you. I teach at the gym, and they're always getting an extra nugget. Like while they're working out, I'm always like, preaching. So like
that would be awesome.
There's this new class at the gym, and I can't remember what it's called, but something and sculpt. Or a tone, one of those words. I think it was sculpt. And I said, there's no such thing as muscle sculpting. It's either growing or it's dying. It's either building or it's atrophying. It's like there's no such thing as sculpting. And they're like, well, way to hate on the new class. I'm like, no, it has nothing to do with the class. I mean, I've never taken the class. I can't judge it. But, just educating them on this jargon,
Yes,
So
totally.
And with the thing about the doctors, I feel really bad because just medical schools are, pharmaceutical driven, and they go in there with this heart that they're wanting to help people, and sometimes they do, but oftentimes it's just like a Band-Aid on a symptom instead of looking at the root cause. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think that's the thing. Like the doctors that I don't have a doctor friend that doesn't feel that same way. Like they all of the, and I know not every doctor is that forward thinking and understands that. I mean, there are some that get into the system and they, I don't want to say it's like brainwashed, but it kind of is, like where they just listen to everything that they're told and they don't seek any outside information. But the doctors that I am friends with, that's exactly what they tell me. As they go into medical school, they obviously, nobody is going to put in that kind of work and education and time if they're not interested in helping people. So, so I'm 100% not slamming doctors. They go into it with that desire. I have no doubt at all. But once they get in there, a lot of them are very disheartened and disillusioned because they realize like, oh my gosh, like basically I am learning what drug to prescribe to people and what interactions those drugs have with each other and how long I can keep somebody on this drug and then what drug I need to get them next. I mean, that is their education. I mean, outside of learning physiology and biology, that's their education. And they're not they are not learning preventative care. They are not learning nutrition. The very little bit of nutrition they get is based on the USDA guidelines, which we've all seen how that gigantic experiment has turned out. So it doesn't work, right? I mean, we're a mess. So they realize that. I mean, they realize, oh my gosh, but then, my friends have been like, listen, we realized we can make a difference. Like we can listen to what they're telling us and we have to, and, they have certain guidelines they have to follow, but they can educate their patients and they have a very, very short window of time to do so. But there's so many resources out there now, like this podcast and books and things like that they can just tell their clients or their patients, instead of writing down a prescription for a statin drug, they can write down the name of a book or a podcast or two and say, listen to these, educate yourself. I want you to work on your diet, and then we'll revisit this in 6 months or whatever. So there are those doctors out there, but it's understanding if you go into a doctor and he sits down with you for 2 minutes and he just wants to hear what's wrong with you, and the first thing he does is grabs that prescription pad, run. I mean, run, because they're not even asking you like, what are you eating? How's your stress levels? How much movement are you getting? Like they don't ask any of those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, okay, so we're going to totally agree on all of that, but I really want the listeners to hear your personal story. Like, how did you get from where you were once you got started on keto, like all the back stuff, and then where you are today?
Well, I think my story is probably pretty much like the same old that you hear a lot of times. I think I don't have like an extraordinary story or some, amazing aha moment necessarily. It was kind of a bunch of things throughout my life. I mean, I grew up probably like most girls in the 70s and 80s. That was the introduction, where the generation where all of the packaged stuff was really big. I would say it was, it was introduced when my mom was growing up, but, it was still a little bit like, she grew up on a farm. My grandmother, they had eggs, they slaughtered their own chickens and pigs, and, they raised their own food. They had their own garden. So she would, when she was growing up, there was really very little, if any, packaged stuff. And so, you started introducing some of the big food stuff and things to make life easier. And, look how quickly you can make a meal that comes out of this box and like all that kind of stuff. So she started kind of seeing some of that. And then as she got older and got married and had kids, and now she's in a 2-person working household where she came from a household where it was only my grandfather worked and my grandma was a stay-at-home mom, homemaker. So that's what she did. She had time to tend to all of those things and cook meals from scratch and loved that. I mean, she still loves that. That's her. She just loves that so much. And you can tell her food's amazing. So my mom then is a working mom. And so like most women in the 70s and 80s, she's buying these packaged foods, frozen banquet meals. And I mean, what could possibly be wrong with those? They're just frozen food, right? And it just makes life easier. She can heat these up and she's still feeding her family good food. That was the thought. It wasn't something heinous. I mean, she's thinking this is a good thing. And the introduction of cereals and Pop-Tarts. And of course the messages are coming at you that, you need grains, you need to have carbohydrates, So she thought we've got to move away from the cholesterol ridden eggs that she grew up on and she was healthy on and my grandparents were healthy on, but they must be killing somebody. So she figured she needs to move away from that and cooking with lard and all of those things. And she needs to up her grains, right? And so her kids need to eat more grains. And so we grew up on cereal and Pop-Tarts and like how anybody ever convinced us in America that stuff is more nutritious than eggs and bacon and sausage. And like, it's still mind boggling, right? I mean, but they did. And we totally bought into it. So I grew up like that, very much, all the processed standard foods. And through my life growing up, battled, wanting to be thin, like all the girls I saw in the magazine. And I never really dealt with weight issues. I was very blessed in that, I had my parents' metabolism, which, they were healthy and young and, good looking people. So I didn't have to battle really that much with weight gain, which is amazing, honestly, because I drank soda all day long and I ate all this crap and ho-hos and dum-dums and candy and when I was in high school, I mean, I would skip lunch and like maybe have an ice cream bar for lunch with my girlfriends or whatever. I mean, it was atrocious. I mean, I ate horribly, but never really had any kind of weight problems. So, but just, would go for all the low fat, whatever was low fat, I would eat it and staying away from fat because my mom taught me well that you eat carbohydrates and you just make sure that you stay away from the fat. Sugar doesn't matter, but we all know you got to watch the fat. And so I did that. And then as I got older, got married, started having babies, then things started changing. I'm like, okay, I felt terrible. I have 5 children, but 3 of them are biological. So I had 3 pregnancies. All 3 of them were horrible. I had terrible swelling. It was just absolutely awful. The, births were not great. I had serious complications after them. And I was fairly young. My first child was born, I was 24. My last one was born, I was 30 something. So
yeah, you were young.
But I was young, so there was no reason for those things to be going on. But I think clearly now, looking back, finally my diet and the way I was living was catching up to me. And I had gone through pretty much every way of eating. I had done every diet possible after each of my children. I mean, I gained like 65 pounds with each kid. Now I'm tall, I'm 5'10", but still, that's crazy. So I gained a lot of weight, took it all off after them, but through very unhealthy means. Whatever diet I could do. I was vegetarian for a while. I was a vegan for a while, couple of years each. And drug my poor family through that. Like I remember going to girlfriends, we're doing like these in-home parties where you mix all these spices up with your food and everything. And the recipes would call for like chicken or beef or pork, and I would put like tofu in the recipes. And my poor kids, my poor family, they would eat it and they would, try to, oh, this is good, Mom. And I would be eating it thinking, no, it's not. But this is what we have to do to be healthy. Like, that's really what I thought. And so just kind of wading through all of that. And I was a runner, and I started and a sand volleyball player. I have been a sand volleyball player for 20 years, and things started breaking down. Now, at this time, I'm like 30 years old, and I was going to a physical therapist. I had horrible hip flexor issues to the extent that I was told it was because of my running and playing volleyball, that those are just really hard on your joints. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I'm 30 years old. I don't even run that much. I'd never ran a marathon in my life. I'd only done like a half marathon, one. I was just a casual runner just to keep in shape is what I thought I was doing it for. And loved sand volleyball. But again, I'm playing in sand. Like I'm not like I'm hard on my joints. And why is everything breaking down at 30? Like, my God, what am I going to look like at 40? So it was bad enough that like I couldn't sleep at night. I would toss and turn just because if I would lay on one side, that hip would go completely numb. And so I'd have to switch over to the other side. It was like laying on pins and needles. I mean, just crazy stuff. And then one of my will be turning 18 this weekend. At the time that I was dealing with all of this, he was about 8 years old and was having all kinds of digestive issues and things like that at that time. And I thought, gosh, this is just crazy. Like, he's dealing with all this stuff. He had been on Zantac as a baby for acid reflux because I was one of those people that would go into the doctor and whatever they told me, I did it and I wouldn't veer from it. And so looking back now, I realize that I set him up by doing those things for all of the digestive issues that he now still is working through. But so just kind of that stuff everything kind of started culminating at the same time, or shortly after, a couple of years later, we were bringing home our daughter from China as a toddler. She was 2.5-year-old, and she has special needs, but she had a lot of digestive issues and she had different rashes that would pop up on her skin and different things that would happen. And I had always been interested in nutrition, but had never really done that much researching and whatnot. So as all of these things are kind of coming together, I just started thinking, I am smarter than this. I can do this. Like, I need to figure out what is going on. So just looking at kind of all of the stuff that Lily was dealing with, and then all of the stuff that I was dealing with and that my son was dealing with, I started researching more. We went kind of down the paleo route from veganism, switched that direction and, was cutting out gluten. I realized that once I cut out gluten out of my daughter's diet, all the rashes started going away. So we started figuring those things out. I ended up taking my son for testing and found out that he is very gluten sensitive. So he, needed to cut it out of his diet completely. So just kind of working through all of these things and realizing that I wanted more education is kind of what led me to going and becoming an NTP and wanting to help other people as I started figuring all this stuff out. And by the way, after changing over to paleo, all of the things that I was dealing with personally started getting better. I had a lot of skin issues as well. And those things started clearing up a little bit. When I decided in the beginning of 2017 is when I started keto. When I started doing that, within a couple of months, I was no longer going to the physical therapist. I had no more joint pain. I had no more skin flare-ups, no more skin issues. My daughter had been diagnosed epileptic at that time. So I immediately started her on a ketogenic diet to help control the seizures, which worked amazingly. I saw all kinds of improvement in other areas of her health. So that's kind of what led us down that path. So again, not anything like, it wasn't like one big moment, but it was just all these years and all of these things kind of culminated.
Wow. That's a lot. That is a lot. And that's been now 2 years?
Yeah, it'll be 3 years here in January. Yep. Okay. So it was January of 2017.
Wow. And then where did you go to school and when did you go to school? Like, it sounds like it was in the middle of all that.
Yes, it was in the middle of kind of figuring all of that out and after becoming keto. So I graduated from the Nutritional Therapy Association. It's the only place you can become, you can get certified as an NTP. So they're based out of Washington, D.C. So I was able to complete that in June of 18. So about a year and a half ago, completed that course. And that was just amazing. I really can't say enough good things about that. Just the course, the information. It's about a year long. And while you can do a lot of it online, you have to go 4 times. So every quarter you go for your practicals and your exams and midterms and whatnot. So it's nice that you don't have to actually go there. You do have weekly online classes. You are in a classroom with your instructors weekly, but you can do it from your own home. So it made it possible for me to do it. Having all the other, I work full time and taking care of my kids and all that kind of thing. Because at that time I had a nutritional business, a coaching business, but had not yet gotten that certification. So it's a really good program, and I definitely recommend it for anybody that's just interested in more information on health. And wellness specifically. I was in that class with a registered dietitian who told me that she learned more in that year class than she had learned in her 4 years of dietetics.
Wow, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah. So I was looking at cause I'm just maybe, a year and a half away from a master's in nutrition. But when I was looking at curriculum, it's like, it's not stuff I believe in. So I'm like, well, what's the point,
Exactly.
So
yeah. And somebody had mentioned to me before before I made the decision to do the NTP route, they had said, well, have you considered doing, becoming an RD? Like you could do that. And a lot of it can be done online, if not all of it. And so I said, well, I've considered it. Of course, it's a lot more to put into time-wise, and I wasn't sure if it was something I really wanted to do. But one of the biggest issues that I had was exactly what you're saying, is I don't subscribe to what they're teaching. Mm-hmm. So all I could think of was having to sit through all of that and learn, quote unquote, what they're teaching me about nutrition, test on all of that stuff, end up having to work in that field, doing exactly what I didn't feel like was what I should be doing and what was actually helping people. And then if you go against what you're taught as an RD, you can lose your license. So
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So I thought, if I don't follow the USDA guidelines, I'm in jeopardy of losing this. Like, no way. I'm not going to put all that time and money and energy into that, knowing that I don't agree with what they're teaching. So, and again, not slamming on RDs. I know a lot of RDs that do not believe the way the USDA guidelines are written. And they very carefully tiptoe around, how they service their clientele, trying to give them the right information without getting in trouble, essentially. So there are a lot of RDs that are really super on it out there, and they get it and they know. But that was just a complication for me that I thought I don't want to do that right now. And I just want the education so I can make sure and know that I understand it and I'm able to help my clients. But having the RD designation was, to me, it would just be a matter of me getting the designation so somebody could go, oh, you're an RD. And I could be like, yeah, but I don't use any of that stuff for you. So don't worry.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, I just decided, you know what, I've been studying nutrition since 2007. And really, truly what I've learned in all these years is that what happens the most with women is not that they don't, well, some of them don't understand the whole thing, which is pretty, so we can help with that. But I find that it's mostly emotional based. Their problems with food don't come from their fork as much as it comes from their heart and their brain,
Totally agree.
So that's why I went on to do life coaching, because I realized that it's the whole life that we need to work on so that the plate can fix itself,
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your farm.
I agree.
I want to hear about like what animals you have and what you do.
So, and so a lot of people say, okay, so you have this farm, but you're a nutritionist, and how are you doing all this together? And to me, they absolutely go hand in hand. My philosophy on nutrition and health and wellness and just, your entire lifestyle is, I am living that philosophy, like really. And the farm is a huge part of that. So when my husband and I got married, so I lived on a farm, growing up. It was a horse farm. We had a couple other animals, but, majority of my life was spent, with horses growing up. And then we got married and we didn't have any money and I couldn't have a horse. So, we lived in a kind of a suburban setting. And then, we'd been married about, I don't know, maybe about 5 or 7 years, something like that. And we're able to move out to a big piece of land. We built a house. I got some horses, and we had 21 acres at that time, and I had a horse business and was living the dream, having babies, having my horses, doing all that stuff. Then we sold that place. We ran into, that was actually during 2007, 2008. My husband is in real estate. So that was a very painful chapter.
Oh, yeah. My husband's in construction. We had the same thing.
It was really just a very stressful, very crazy time. So we, in that time, decided that we needed to sell that place. I was also, at that time, I had just had my third son, was having kind of a hard time keeping up with the horse business. We were selling, and we were training search and rescue and mounted patrol horses, and we were selling them all over the country. And I had a partner that was in Minnesota that I was working with. So it was a lot. It was a lot of work, a lot of effort. So decided to sell that at that time and move kind of back to more of a suburban setting, which at the time we thought would be really good for our kids and kind of getting them into a neighborhood and all that kind of thing. So we did that, and then stayed in that area of town for about 10 years. And for the entire 10 years I was there, and it's a beautiful part of town. We made some great friends, loved it. I don't have anything negative at all to say about it, but except that I felt like I was suffocating for 10 years. I just had a really hard time. It's a very populated area and beautiful, but I just needed some space. And I just felt like I was getting into that kind of grind with my kids and I don't know if everybody, if all moms deal with this or what, but I was feeling like I had to bribe and beg them to like go outside and play. it was like, get off the video games, no more screen time, go outside. We have a basketball goal, like go shoot some basketball. Or it was get your bike and go ride your bike. Like we had sidewalks, this particular community, this part of town, like sidewalks connect everything. It's like miles of sidewalks. Like you can ride everywhere. Very safe, beautiful area. They had a ton of friends. So, I'm like, just go outside, go get some exercise. I lived outside. Like I remember getting in trouble because we would not come in to check in when we were supposed to with my mom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we just didn't want to come in. And I understand they have all these things that we didn't have to entertain them inside, but I just kept feeling like, gosh, they don't even want to be outside. Like we have this backyard and they don't want to do it. And to help me a little bit, I got a little outdoor chicken. I got a little chicken coop. Where we lived, you were allowed to have urban raised chickens in this little urban setting. So we had a little chicken coop, and I thought that would help. Like the kids maybe want to go outside and be with the chickens and collect eggs. And it did for the girls. The girls were young and they were into that, but the boys not so much. So I was just really struggling with this. And then we bought the farm and a house that's with the farm that we rent out as a vacation property. And so we started kind of populating the farm with a few animals here and there, and mostly rescue animals that they found out we got a farm, and then, word would spread. And so we started bringing in like some goats and a sheep. And it was things like our sheep was bottle fed because he was rejected by his mom. So the farmer, they're raising sheep. They don't have time to mess with this sheep. So we're like, yeah, we'll take him. So we took him in, and a few little goats, and kind of started like that, started putting more chickens out at the farm. We had a lot more room, and started having groups of people wanted to come out and see the animals. And so we started doing that, and started opening it up to special needs groups and having them be able to come out and spend time with the animals. So just kind of doing all of those types of things. And so that went on for about 2 years. And our farm was about 7 minutes away from where we were living at the time. And then the neighbor's house came up for sale. And the neighbor's house shares our private drive. So there's the house that we rent and then the house that we now live in, because of course we were like, yes, we'll buy your house. So it was a huge decision and a big change for us because the kids were in a different school district. So, and I have my senior this year, he was able to stay. We were able to get him grandfathered in our old district. So he is finishing out his school year there, but all of our other kids had to switch schools. And we have a sophomore, a seventh grader, a second grader, and a first grader. So everybody had to switch, but everybody was on board, surprisingly, and they all wanted to move out to the farm. And I can tell you that it is amazing. It's exactly what I prayed it would be. We moved out here. Now the kids, I don't have to yell at them to get outside. They want to be outside all the time. Their friends want to come over and play and hang out here. We have 4-wheelers and go-karts and all that stuff. So the teenage boys think that's awesome. And then, all the younger kids want to come out and see the animals. So we currently have about 40 chickens, I guess. So 2 roosters, the rest of them are laying hens. So we eat all of our own eggs. So we collect eggs every day, and we're able to do those. And then we also give a dozen eggs to all of our guests that stay at our cabin. So that's kind of fun. They always think that's great. So the kids love, collecting the eggs, and we have alpacas. They're just pets. They're fiber animals. So if you wanted to sell the fiber, we could, but we don't really mess with that. They were rescues. So they're just pets here, but we have some goats and a cow and a couple of horses and a sheep. Ducks, which give us eggs every day. We love the ducks. We also have turkeys, which also lay us eggs every day. So
wow,
so it's quite a setup here. It's a lot of fun though. We really just have a lot of fun. So we actually host schools. We'll come out and do like little field trips here, and we still host special needs groups. We do that free of charge as like an outreach for them. But the schools, we do have them pay to come out here, and that kind of helps us be able to fund all the other stuff that we do with the animals. But it's great, and I love having the kids out here from the schools because I feel like, this generation, like even so much more than my generation, is so removed from where their food comes from. And I really saw that living in like the suburban area that we were in. It's just, and it's even a nice, like progressive area where people talk about that and everybody's eating organic and, they're all excited about going to the farmers markets on Saturdays. And, it's that kind of area, but still the kids, I think just don't, to them, you get food from the grocery store and it comes in a box or a package, and they just don't think beyond that. Like, where, like, I remember talking to kids about like, oh, we're eating pork chops. Well, what's a pork chop? What animal does that come from? I don't know. Like a cow, maybe? Or was a chicken? There's just that. Like, I don't think there was ever a time in my entire life that you couldn't ask me where a piece of meat came from that I couldn't tell you the animal it came from.
Yeah.
So, I think if you ask your kids, okay, we're eating steak, what animal does that come from? Or what animal does the bacon come from? Like a lot of kids, they don't know. They just do not know. And so I think it's important for them to understand. I think if you don't understand where your food's coming from, and then you're not going to understand why farming practices are important and why organic is important and why free range is important. And so I think they need to be taught that. And so I just love watching these little elementary and preschool kids like light up, because first of all, they love the animals, but secondly, they learn stuff and they're just like, you can see the light bulbs go off when they're out here, like, oh my gosh, like they're putting two and two together,
Yeah. Yeah. We live on a farm too. We don't have all the animals. We have chickens only and dogs, but we live on 5 acres.
That's nice.
And so, yeah, we've moved here in 2001. So my kids were little. Like my youngest was born 97. So he was 4 when we moved here. But yeah, I loved it with the kids going out. Like one of their favorite things to do was to go out and play in the mud on a rainy day. There's like a little creek, and they love just going and getting super muddy. So I think it's good.
I love that. And that's so important. And even again, like growing up, or like those 10 years that we spent in that very suburban area with my kids. And I'm not slamming if you live in a suburb. I'm just saying, like, this is kind of the mindset was, don't go outside and get dirty. Like, don't get muddy, don't get in the dirt. My kids were, when it really hit me was when my youngest would like be outside and see a bug and be like, oh my gosh, there's a bug. And it's like, start freaking out. And I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, as a kid, we would catch like whatever bug we could and like try to figure it out. And we'd put them in jars and like, like all this like exploring and like thinking and the creek, like jumping the rocks in the creek and looking under all the rocks to find crawdads and like that kind of thing. And I realized like, oh my gosh, like my kid who's lived here for the majority of his life is completely like, he doesn't think of outside any of those things. Like and none of his friends do. Like all of his friends are the same, like stay inside, stay clean, stay calm, stay, like, And that was like heartbreaking to me. And to see them now, and I warn all the parents when they're like, they've got a little friend coming out or whatever. I'm like, listen, send them in boots and clothes that you don't mind them getting muddy in or dirty in, because they are going to be playing with animals. They're going to be riding go-karts and four-wheelers, and they're going to be playing in the woods, and like, they're going to be dirty.
Yeah. And it's fun. Gosh, I love living out in the country. I don't want to leave. It would be nice to be close to town, but there's something to be said for living out here and having that privacy. And, we live on a wine trail. So we have like a winery in front of our house, another one like around the corner. So ours is kind of interesting dynamic, I guess you would say. So talk about, Jessica, before we run out of time, if you could please just talk about a little bit about raising your kids this way, because I know that a lot of moms, they think, oh, well, I've got to cook for my family. So what would you say to address that?
Well, I would say that I'm one of those moms that I absolutely love. I love to cook. So I do love making meals for my family and doing all that stuff. So the way that I kind of the way that I do it and the way that I talk to my clients about is, first of all, don't think you have to do everything all the time. Like, let a little pressure off of yourself. Because I think as moms, we're like, oh my gosh, like I have to cook, and I got to get them outside, and I got to get them to soccer, and I got to get them, and I got to go to work, and I got to, you got all these things. Like, we wear all these different hats all the time. And I totally get that, because I'm right there with you. But I think that, for me personally, one of the most important things that I can do, like my number one job, is taking care of these kids. Like, I want to make sure that I hopefully am raising them as strong as I can. I want them to have a good microbiome. I want them to have, good, strong, healthy muscles and bones and gut and brain. And, I want everything to work as well as I possibly can. And in order to achieve that, I know that means that I probably am not going to be able to feed them fast food and meals out of boxes all the time. Like, I'm going to have to get some real nutrition in them. Mm-hmm. And so I think that is super, super important. And I don't think that means that you have to be in the kitchen making a meal every single day. But I do think it means that you're going to have to make that the meals that they are eating are going to have to be mostly made from you. So one of the ways that I do that, because I have very limited time, like most moms, is I'm not big on the meal prepping, like for the week on Sundays. I've just never been able to do that. I think awesome, more power to the people that can do that stuff. But it's like the way my life goes. I could never say every single Sunday I'm going to have time to do that. Like, it just doesn't happen. Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's always something comes up. Always somebody needs something, or, we get invited to come over and do this or that. And I'm not going to be like, no, I'm sorry, we're not going to come over because I have to meal prep for the week. So the way I do it is, I will make, probably on average, I cook about 3 to 4 nights a week. But what I do on those, like, let's say it's 3 nights out of the 7, on those 3 nights, I will make multiple meals at one time. So if I make, a meal, then I will make 2 or 3 more of that same dish. So I just double or triple every recipe that I make. And it doesn't even have to be, I guess I should also say, it doesn't have to always be that you're making recipes either. Like, a meal could just simply be a protein and some veggies and call it a day. Like, it doesn't have to be this big, drawn out, fancy thing that you're doing every night. Mm-hmm. But let's say on 3 nights, I am making some recipes. I will double or triple those, and then I will freeze those. We have 3 freezers actually, because I do this so often, but I will freeze those. So just if you have an extra freezer, or you can make room in your current freezer, I will freeze those meals and then be able to make those like the next week. And I think another big deal is trying to not recreate the wheel every time you cook. So if your family has 4 or 5 or 6 meals, or whatever, one of the things I did is we sat down one day and we made a list of our top 10 favorite meals as a family. And that is the list that I pull from 90% of the time. And then if there's times because I do love to cook, so sometimes I am inspired to make something else, and then I'll try a new recipe, but that's never more than like 1 time a week I'll do something like that. Otherwise, I think because what ends up happening is, if we're making the same things, your family likes them, you know what you need to get when you go to the grocery store. So you're not always going with like some big list, and you always inevitably, at least I do, forget 1 or 2 things. And then I get home and I'm supposed to make this big, elaborate, awesome recipe I couldn't wait to make. And now I can't make it because I forgot the whatever, because it's not something I normally buy. So if you kind of stick to those meals that you can cook, it makes it so much less stressful, because you're like, okay, I go to the grocery store, here's the things that I know my family are going to eat, so I'm just going to buy these things, and then we can do it. And I think one really great thing to be able to get good foods into your kids, I love hiding like organ meats into different dishes. And it's so easy to do, because my kids love meatloaf. So I can make a meatloaf and hide liver in there. Hamburgers, I make hamburgers and hide liver. You can do, and same with heart. You can use heart as well. Kidneys, very easy to, you just put that in the food processor, not too long because it gets pretty disgusting if you leave it in too long, but just process it a little bit. And then you can put some of that stuff in. You can make a lasagna and put that stuff into the meat sauce and the lasagna. Nobody is ever even going to taste it. So those are like really easy ways to get those kinds of foods into your kids too.
Wow. Okay. So that would be a really good way to get it into me too. Cause I cannot like just the idea of eating organ meats. I don't know. I've tried pate. I've tried liverwurst. I've tried all of that. And I don't even care for the small tip of a fillet. Like I want the big piece, you know, cause it's so close to the liver. It just it has some of that flavor, you know?
Yeah, it is definitely something you have to get used to. And it is definitely not like I will eat liver pate and I will eat those types of things. I do like raw fish, but when it comes to like organ meats, there is something about eating organ meats that's like, we've just gotten this like, ooh, gross thing, and it can be hard. So definitely hiding that stuff in, like you won't notice it. And as a matter of fact, when I started hiding that into like the meatloaf that I make my kids, they're like immediately said it was the best meatloaf I'd ever made. And I was dying because I'm like, oh my gosh, like here I was thinking because I'd been hiding it in their hamburgers, but I hadn't been hiding very much in there because I was afraid they would be able to taste it in a hamburger patty. So I put a lot more into the meatloaf. And I was thinking the whole time I was like waiting on them to take their bites of their meal. Cause I thought, oh, they're going to totally call me out. They're gonna be like, what'd you put in this meal? Cause my kids do that anyway. They're like, is this really, fill in the blank, whatever I made. Because I have a history, especially as a vegan, of trying to switch things out on them, and tell them it was one thing and it wasn't. Or, the meal's called something, but it was like faux, whatever. So they're on to me, but they said that was the best meatloaf I'd ever made. And I continue to make it that way to this day. And they're like, Mom, your meatloaf is the best meatloaf. And it is so good. And a lot of that I really think is your body, when you eat that kind of stuff, it is so nutrient dense that it just lights everything up. Like your body is like, oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You're giving me all, because that's the problem with all the packaged foods and the fast foods. Like in a pinch, if you have to do that, fine. Like, no condemnation. Like you've got to do what you've got to do. And sometimes that's what works. But I think when we're getting all of that stuff and when we're getting that frequently, and that tends to be the majority of our diet, especially for our kids, their little bodies are craving those nutrients. Like we need them. Every cell in our body needs those micronutrients, those minerals and vitamins, and we can't get them out of those packaged foods and those fast foods. We're just not going to be able to get them. So I think it makes those meals taste good because the kids, they may not understand. I mean, obviously they're not like, oh, thanks, Mom, I needed the vitamin K today. I mean, they don't get that, but their bodies are like, oh, this is amazing. Give me more. Yeah. And so I think it's awesome when you can see that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's a documentary I watched years ago called Overfed and Undernourished. And, talking about the childhood obesity crisis and how these kids have no energy. They, their cells are lacking the proper nutrients to thrive, yet they're obese. And it's just this huge thing. And quite frankly, I mean, I think that it is child abuse to allow your children to get obese because that kid is going to have a problem their entire life,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it won't be one problem. That obesity is linked to all kinds of other diseases, like obviously heart disease is what we all think of, and diabetes, but their obesity is linked to all kinds of other things. Like it's really horrible. And I totally agree with what you're saying about that documentary. It is 100%. And I feel it's this way for adults too, but children, I think, are especially prone to it because their little bodies are growing and they have to have the nutrients to grow. And one of the most important nutrients when they're growing, obviously protein, but is fat. And people have been so like I said, our generation, my generation, we grew up so scared to death of fat. We were told fat is so bad, but Fat makes up every single cell in your body. If these little kids are not getting all the fat that they need, first of all, they're not going to grow right. Things just will not grow properly. They just won't. They won't be healthy. Your body is going to start stealing from other areas in order to be able to build the cells that they need to build to grow. And then on top of that, the obesity comes in because the kids keep getting the signal that they're hungry. Mm-hmm. They're constantly hungry because their bodies every time something comes in, the body is expecting, okay, we're waiting. Great. Here it comes. Here come the nutrients. And then it's nutrient void. And so then the body goes, oh man, that wasn't what we were waiting for. Okay, kick it back in. We need more food. So those hormones fire back up again and they tell you time to eat. You got to eat more. So these little kids, they don't understand why they constantly want to eat, but that it literally is driving them. It's not their fault. It's the same with adults. I tell my clients, it's not your fault that you feel like you want to eat all the time. You have to change what you're giving your body so that your body will turn those hormones off and say, okay, now we're satiated. Now she's got what we need. Now we're getting the nutrients, and it will stop telling you to eat all the time. Mm-hmm. But you cannot outwill your biology. You can't. Yeah. And little kids can't do it either.
Yeah. Willpower doesn't exist. It's such a finite resource. I was telling some clients that they did a study. And it was a Stanford study, Baba Shiv study, and they told these participants to go into a room and memorize either a 2 or 3, I can't remember by heart now, but I want to say like a 2-digit number or a 7-digit number. And then what they did was they had them walk down the hallway to another room where they were supposed to, tell them the number. And they could choose whatever they wanted, and they had as much time as they needed. But along the hallway, when they were walking down, there was a table, and they could either pick some fruit or they could choose cake. Well, the people who chose the 7-digit number most often chose the cake because all of their willpower was being used to remember the number.
Wow. That is super fascinating. I love that.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, there's so much to be said. I study a lot of energy work, and the studies that I've run across that, that show the power of your brain and what you focus on and just all that is just ridiculously interesting.
Yeah, it is. And that is the kind of thing there's a girl that was kind of in my circle of friends, and she is into health and nutrition and stuff. And I remember one time she had posted, I thought she's going to hate me for this, but she had posted your willpower, something, and this is not verbatim, but it was something like, willpower is like a muscle. You have to work it to build it up or something like that. And I just commented on there and I was like, absolutely not. It is finite resource. And there is not a thing you can do to build it up. Mm-hmm. Because all of these women that were friends of ours are like, I know, I'm trying. I'm working so hard to get, and I just don't have any willpower and I just can't do this. And I'm like, that's such a defeating feeling when you feel like I'm just never going to be able to get, like, I don't know how XYZ person has so much willpower. She's just so much stronger than me and she must really work at it. And I just got to keep working at it. That's such baloney. You cannot, that's why at the end of the day, so many of us, that's when we want to binge and eat all the stuff that we know we shouldn't be eating because we've made so many decisions all day long. Mm-hmm. And by the time we get to the end of the day, we can't. Our willpower is gone and our brain is just like, that's it. So I try to help coach people that to set up routines and to do things. So in the morning, you're not hitting the snooze. That's not even a decision. Like the alarm goes off, you get up because that is a draw on your willpower immediately first thing in the morning. So just not hitting the snooze. You put your coffee in the coffee pot the night before and let it brew. You're not even trying to decide like how much you're going to brew in the morning. Just all of these little things, as many things as you can just get on a routine and you just do things exactly the same way every morning or whatever. And you just kind of go through your day and you set in your calendar if you're going to go to the gym or if you're going to, I have a little workout room downstairs if I'm going to go work out downstairs, because all of those decisions that you have to make, those are decisions you don't have to make. Like those can all be like pre-programmed into your day.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and knowing like what you want to eat, like don't keep things in the house that you know are temptations or things that you don't want to eat. Don't even do it. Because if you have the things that you know that you feel good eating and that are what you want to be eating, then again, you're not draining your willpower all day, because inevitably what happens, this is what happens for me, is at the end of the day, I'm like, you know what? I am so exhausted. I'm so tired. I don't want to think of anything else. I don't know what we're going to have for dinner. I didn't plan anything. Let's just go grab something. And that's when everything falls apart. And then you feel terrible. And then you're like, I blew it again. And it's this constant like cycle, you know? And so that whole thing makes me so crazy when people say that, like, you just got to work at it, build up your willpower.
I know. That's totally true. I always call it habit stacking, so that you create new habits so they become rituals. So they're things that you don't even have to think about.
Yes.
So, like for me in the morning, the gym, that's like my happy place. So I don't have to think twice about getting up, because, you know, and I always say, if you don't love exercise, you're doing it wrong. You know, you've got to find something that you love.
Yes.
So
that's because
awesome.
If you hate it, you're never going to go anyway.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be fit into your day, you know?
Yeah. And it can't be, it's the same thing with, you know, everything in life, I think, but it can't be because so-and-so is doing it and she looks great. Well, then I'm just going to grit my teeth and bear it get through it until I love it. Well, it's probably not going to happen. Like, you need to find what works for you and what you enjoy doing and do that. Like, that's what you need to do.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's awesome. Well, is there any words of wisdom you want to leave us with, Jessica?
I think I spoke lots of words. I am a talker, and I just get going and can't stop myself. So, I mean, I guess you know, just I guess the biggest thing that I would like people to really think about or know, like as it pertains to just their lifestyle and any like wellness practices and rituals that they're trying to do, or diet related things that they're trying to do, is really just to focus. I think first and foremost, I'm a keto girl, right? Like that's what my podcast is about. That's what a lot of people come to me about. But foundationally, first and foremost, I'm a nutritionist. I'm a nutritional, you know, therapist. I'm very focused on getting the foundation of the right nutrients and whole foods into your life, like just really focusing on that and not worrying so much about, you know, the carb and protein and fat, you know, ratios. I think we need to focus more on the protein and fat, because that is where we're going to get all of those nutrients that we need for the most part. You know, eating as much organic stuff as you can, really getting back to trying to get some of those organ meats added into your diet somehow, so we're getting those vitamins and minerals and nutrients that we really need. That's very difficult to get other places, and just focusing on that, getting outside, like just kind of getting back to our roots a little bit, like just trying to just get back to the basics, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to say. Just not making things so complicated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely hear you there. And like everybody's personality is different too. So it's like some people, I always say track if that makes you feel good. And if you're a free spirit like I am, I mean, I have such a hard time with tracking and, you know, all of that. It's just like learning to listen to your body, you know, and what it needs.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, Tracy, because I do, when I start working with someone, specifically if they're wanting to look at a keto lifestyle, then I will tell them, I want you to track in the beginning, mostly because I think so many of us are so divorced from our food. Again, if we know what a carb, a protein, and a fat macro are, we don't understand like what they are in the foods we eat. Like we don't know how much like a piece of cheese. We can't, most people can't be like, well, I don't know. Is there protein in cheese? Are there carbs? Like, I didn't know there were carbs in cheese. Like people just, they don't. So I feel like tracking in the beginning is so super important because it helps you understand your food. And then you can go, you know, oh my gosh, I didn't know when I ate this there was this many carbs in this. Like, are you kidding me? Like, or, whatever. So I think that's super important to do. But I always tell people, like you, Tracy, I don't like to track either. And I don't, but I did make myself do it in the beginning so I could learn more and understand like kind of how all that stacks and what it looks like at the end of the day. But I think one of the things that happens when you do that is you do become intuitive. Like you start realizing like, oh, that's funny. Like I'm realizing that on the days when I have this many carbs, I feel like this. Or on the days when I didn't have that much fat, I'm feeling like this, or, I realize that I need to eat more protein or less protein or, whatever it is. So I think that really helps. And then once you stop tracking all that stuff, you start realizing like, you start kind of gravitating toward those foods that, make you feel good, because newsflash, it's different for everybody.
Yeah, right.
So I definitely am I'm a big believer in starting macros if you're looking at a keto lifestyle, for example, but that's probably not where you're going to stay. That it is going to be different for everybody. And once you kind of figure that out, then it's going to be easy. That's why it's a lifestyle, right? It starts just becoming who you are, the way you eat, like you start figuring that out. And that changes. That can change every month. It could change every year. And everything in between.
Yeah, it does. It definitely changes. That's why you have to tweak your macros occasionally and switch things up so that your body can, kind of be tricked so that you can, keep course correcting, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you, Jessica?
Probably the easiest place is my website is jessicatai.com. Super simple. And you can go there and find all of my stuff. Everything my Facebook and Instagram and all of that. I do most stuff on Facebook or Instagram. And I do have a keto course that they can look into on my website. And I also am offering right now, there's a free 7 days to get started in your keto lifestyle workbook on my website. So if they go there and click on that link, they can sign up and they'll have one sent to them.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. It's like a little ebook thing that they get their email. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And it's really cool. It just walks you through 7 days of starting kind of the keto lifestyle if you're looking to start or restart. And it's just one change a day. So, I know you and I both believe in that is you just cannot throw everything at somebody at once because it's overwhelming and you're never going to stick to it and it's going to be too much. So this is just one change a day. And, really, I did it as a 7-day workbook because it's, it is good as a little 7-day workbook. But when I'm working with somebody, I wouldn't even necessarily do one change a day. So you could even draw this out to make it like a 7-week thing where every week you just do one of these changes and get that implemented in your life. And so it's one of these things like Tracy and I were talking about is not using all your willpower up in the morning as you're like trying to decide what to do every day and what all you should be implementing. This is like one change a day. It's like, journaling and drinking enough water every day and like just, getting your circadian rhythm set, like all of these lifestyle changes that are really going to help you be successful in, whatever you're trying to accomplish with keto.
Oh, that's really awesome. I'm going to have to subscribe to that myself. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on. You are such a cutie, and I really enjoy our chats together. So
thank you, Tracy. I loved being on here.
Oh, you're so cute. Oh my gosh, I just love talking to that girl. She said on her show when we were together, she's like, you're like my sister from another mister. So that was really fun. Please, if you like the show, head on over to iTunes, give us a rating and review so more people can find these awesome stories and wonderful information. And we are always looking for new guests. So please come on the show and share your story or tell your friend or tell your family or tell anybody so that we can inspire people to adopt a ketogenic lifestyle and change lives. So thank you so much for listening, you guys. Go out and make it a super day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.